Welcome back, Last of Us fans. We are here to talk about the first episode, debut episode for the series on HBO, and I'm still trying to pick my jaw up off the floor. It is late Monday. I said I was going to have this review up Monday morning. The reason why I haven't is because I've been watching it. I've watched it like two more times since then. Fantastic debut. Like I said before, if you watched my previous video on the five things I was looking for in this episode as a casual gamer, they pretty much hit all the points I was looking for. Great, a lot of good fan service, but nothing that I think is going to draw back or hinder the series. So let's get right into how things kicked off. I like that they went with an intro that kind of explained the whole fungal virus thing. One thing with The Walking Dead, you kind of never figured out why this was happening, but they gave you a quick intro on scientifically where this was coming from and how even back in the 60s this was something that was in the air. They just didn't think it was going to affect humans. And I like the whole idea how they played on kind of the TV banter that we expect these days. The host was trying to keep it real friendly and breezy. And a lot of times we're used to these days kind of our celebrity scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson to kind of make things fun when it comes to science. But this particular scientist was very morbid, very matter of fact, like, look, this could be an extinction level event if it ever happened with humans. We're okay now, but if it ever translated to us, we'd be in trouble because the only purpose of this fungal infection is to spread itself across the globe. It can't be reasoned with, it can't be, bartered with, nothing. Its only purpose is to infect and to expand. And we see how quickly that happened once we got to Outbreak Day. Now, before I even go to Outbreak Day, which is one of the top five things I was waiting to see, let's start with Sarah. Fantastic job by the actress. Even in the game, we only were with Sarah for less than an hour. But the fact that she was killed so coldly really resonated with us. And we see that throughout the game with how Joel carries himself. But with this one, we're forced to sit with Sarah a little bit more. We're not just sad because it's a young girl that passed away before, she got to experience life. We see what type of young girl she is, how thoughtful she is, how caring she is. Just the fact that there's no mother in the picture, but at the same time, she's so attentive to her father. Just the fact that she went across town to repair his watch for him is number one. Number two, even getting ready in the morning. You're the child. You're supposed to be, following your father's direction. But here she is looking out for him, letting him know, oh, your shirt is inside out. She's paying attention to minute details like that. That kind of gives you an idea of how much of a caring person she is. And then also volunteering next door with that elderly couple. A lot of kids wouldn't be interested in doing that. So we see a very perceptive, very loving, very empathetic young lady that was cut down. So we got all of that in the span of about 20 to 30 minutes. So it made her death hit so much harder, the fact that she went out like that. So fantastic job by the actress with Sarah, Tandy Newton's daughter. So great job there. Now leading to Outbreak Day. Initially in my previous video, I said I wanted like a full episode or at least about 40 minutes of Outbreak Day. I don't know if they hit quite 40 minutes, but they summed up everything perfectly. Some of it was a scene by scene adaptation. You've probably seen online the side by side videos, once they got in the car with Tommy, Joel, and Sarah, when they're riding to try and figure out where to go to, the signs match up, the burning neighbor's house, all that was taken straight from the game. Let me say this about Gabriel Luna, who plays Tommy. I know they don't look the same, obviously, but vocally, he sounds just like Tommy. He has all the inflections down. So fantastic job there. He's did his homework. I was amazed by that. So great job there. I love the scene. I love the change that they did make as far as when the explosion happens with the car. Instead of a car, they amped it up in this episode. It's a plane that crashes into, well, what is that, Main Street, and causes the car to flip. So no complaints about Outbreak Day. Oh, I do want to touch on one thing going back to Sarah when she initially came in contact with the infected. That was another nice little change. Seeing that old lady in the background and it's blurred, but you can see how she's transforming and how the infection is infiltrating her body. That was so eerie to see. It reminded me of, if you've seen the It remake, Remember the old lady who was in the kitchen making the cookies and she turned into that monster? That was that scene, but done so much better because in that scene in it kind of takes you out of it when she comes out of the kitchen. She's this big CGI monster, so it's a little bit kind of ridiculous. But in this one, there's no CGI. This is all kind of rooted back to the intro and something that scientifically does happen now with ants. And we're seeing how it could potentially infect a human being. So that was great to see. So bravo with Outbreak Day. No complaints there. They nailed everything perfectly. And then we get taken into present day. And we see another example of how callous this new world is. The catalyst was seeing Sarah get killed, but now we see another young child that they have to put down the military because she's infected. This is a mute child. We don't know what she's experienced, but we see how cold and callous this new regime is. So, and automatically, you're already having negative views about the military and about Fedra. They basically have the whole society in kind of a military feudalism setup or dictatorship, as Marlene said. You're basically just working on the land for nothing. You're getting scraps in these quarantine zones. It's a very hard life to live. So very bleak, almost no hope going on whatsoever. And then we're introduced to Tess. Tess was a little bit more rugged than what I expected, from the game, but she has kind of like those Lady Macbeth vibes going on. She's a very good manipulator. She knows what buttons to press. The number one saver herself when she was in that situation with Robert. She knew exactly what to say to get out of that. And then with Joel, she knew exactly what to say to kind of trigger him to do what needed to be done and getting that motor back and getting everything back that they needed. So it's kind of like, Pedro Pascal is, of course, doing a very good job with Joel. He's, very um, much nailing that whole kind of heaviness that Joel carries. But in this episode, I was more impressed by all the surrounding characters around him, from Sarah to Tess to Marlene. Everybody was just really hitting it. So I'm expecting it to get more ramped up with Joel in the later episodes. But for this first one, all the side characters are hitting their beats perfectly. And that takes me to the Queen Firefly herself, Marlene. Fantastic job. And I know Merle Dandridge, I knew she was going to do a good job. I told you guys before that she has a lot of experience playing women in strong leadership roles. So that translated perfectly here. She's another one that knows exactly what to say to lead her troops. When she was dealing with her comrade, I forget her name, Kim, that was kind of questioning her leadership. She knew at that point she needed to give her a little bit of the plan to get her to do what needed to be done as far as what was going on with smuggling Ellie. And then she's a very good tactician because she knows how to think on the fly. When you had that fallout with Robert getting killed, and she's there shot, but here's Joel and Tess right in front of her, and she knew right off the bat to say, "Look, I need to get these two to help smuggle Ellie out of here." She thought that on the fly while she's sitting there bleeding out. So, a master tactician, and that gives you an idea why she's the head of such a counter revolutionary group, excuse me, not counter, but revolutionary group like the Fireflies, why they follow her, because she's such a strong leader. You can see that from the beginning. But what probably impressed me the most about her is how she dealt with Ellie, because we can see how distrustful Ellie is of any outsiders. But in the span of what, 5 to 10 minutes, she got Ellie completely on her side. And one thing I could say about this version of Ellie, she seems to respect power, not just like blatant authority and stuff and all that, but people who exude power and know who they are. And I think she was able to pick up on that immediately with Marlene, which is why she was taken with her, even though she technically had been kidnapped, but she can tell Marlene's intentions from the beginning. She could tell, like, this is somebody that's not a liar. This is not somebody that's going to manipulate me. This is someone I can trust. So that's going to serve her well. She's never been outside of the quarantine zones before, but having that innate ability to kind of read people that quickly, that's what's going to keep Ellie alive in this series. Now going to Ellie, Bella Ramsey, I didn't have any worries about how she was going to do this role. I know some people were very upset, like, oh, she doesn't look like Ellie. I'm like, look, guys, the only person that looked like Ellie that I know of as far as known actresses was Ellen Page, and Ellen Page does not exist anymore. So that was already out of the picture. So I have no problems with Bella Ramsey when she was talking initially. Even her curses have the inflection that Ellie has in the game. So I was like, yes, that's Ellie. I have no complaints about her. She's going to be fine. But one thing that is a little different from the game that I noticed, Ellie is from the beginning in the first game, she's always been feisty, very scrappy. She can handle herself. She has a knife in the series, like we expected. But she came across a little bit more bloodthirsty than I anticipated. I'd said in my initial video about the top 5 things I was looking for. I wanted to see how they do her first kill. Is that going to be shocking to her? How's she going to handle it? But looking at the way she was watching Joel when Joel was beating that officer to death, the look on Ellie's face, in the post episode recap, HBO, one of the showrunners talked about that moment activated her, like she was really into that. I looked at that as like bloodthirsty. She was she might already have a few bodies under her belt. We talking about first kill. She might have already put some people down already the way she was looking at Joel. But that kind of goes back to what I was saying about I think she respects power, like genuine power. So Marlene, Joel, those are people that she knows, okay, I can count on these people. They know how to handle themselves. And that whole, being intrigued by power and all that, that probably comes from being raised and, under Fedra and that Fedra school that they mentioned that Marlene scooped her up from. So she kind of has that mean streak of knowing that this is how you handle business and this is how you bend people to your will. So I think that is already in Ellie. So it wouldn't surprise me as we're going along. She already mentioned she's, killed a few people. It would not surprise me because she looked very bloodthirsty and ready for action in that in that little clip. So no complaints about Ellie. As far as anything that I didn't like, I'm kind of drawing a blank. They hit everything. There was one change that did surprise me, the whole spores thing. When they initially Tess and Joel, when they went into that basement area and saw that infected stuck on the wall, I was like, oh, where's their mask at? I'm instinctively thinking that they need gas masks, but there's no spores in this, universe. It's those tendrils that came out of that old lady's mouth. I guess that's the only thing they really got to be worried about touching, I'm assuming. But not having it be an airborne virus in that capacity as far as spores go, that opens things up a little bit more because honestly, having gas masks on hand would be kind of cumbersome. And I think it would take away from some of the more emotional scenes, especially when they're hiding from clickers and things like that. If they had their mask on, you really couldn't see their faces with the actors and all that. So I think that's probably one of the main reasons they went against going with the spores from the original game. But I don't have a problem with that. Everything flowed fine. I'm really looking forward to how they do the clickers. Hopefully that's the next episode or later on in the series. So this was a great debut. It's pretty much up there with all the great HBO debut shows that we've seen so far. We'll just see how they nail it throughout the series, but they're off and running at this point. As far as anything else I can think of, I don't know if you guys caught it initially when Sarah was watching TV, when they were talking about disturbances. They mentioned that it started in Jakarta, Indonesia. So, I don't think in the game they ever mentioned where the outbreak started from. So, this might be some new news, being that potentially all this started in Indonesia, whatever was going on there. So, maybe we'll get some more information on that as the series goes along. So, I would say off the bat, my favorite performance is probably between Sarah and Marlene as far as the characters. But let me know what you guys think. Who hit you first? Do you have any complaints, any issues so far? But I rate this episode like a good solid A. I don't have any problems. Looking forward to talking with you guys next week, and especially those of you who have went through the games and everything. Let me know if there's anything that I overlooked, anything that you're waiting to see, or any issues that you had in this episode. But thank you for your time, and I'll be back next week, I promise, Monday morning with a review of episode 2 for The Last of Us. Thanks a lot, and talk to you guys soon.